Now I like
Technique by New Order.
but then I like
Electronic by Electronic.
which is better. There's only one way to find out.
Aya! Welcome! So here we are having a factory fight, and what is that, you might be asking? Well, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to pit two of my personal favourite albums of all time up against each other. They both originally came out on the legendary Manchester indie label Factory Records, one in 1989 and the other one just over 2 years later in 1991. Of course, I'm talking about Technique by New Order and the debut from Electronic, Self-Titled. Of course, both featuring Bernard Sumner on vocals, guitar, keyboards, etc. So I thought it'd be interesting to pit these two albums up against one another, not just because they're related in many ways, you know, group membership, similar style really of music that was certainly becoming more prevalent at the time, and of course them both being on Factory Records in that kind of late 80s into the turn of the 90s period. But I thought it'd be interesting for me, and hopefully for you as well, to see just which one of these is my favourite out of the two. I mean, I've kind of got preconceived notions as to which one might win. This is maybe a little more scientific, or as scientific as I can get it, to truly determine which one is the best for me personally. Now then, there's 9 tracks on Technique. However, there is 10 on Electronic. And I wanted this to be a fair fight, so there's a track in the middle of Electronic which is basically like a sub 2 minute interlude called Soviet, and that one won't be included in the head-to-head for each track, because what I'm going to do here, the 9 tracks from Technique, 9 of the 10 from Electronic, I'm just going to rank each track out of 5. We'll have a total for each at the very end out of 45, and whichever album scores more than 45 wins the factory fight. It's that simple. So we might as well just get started then. Coming in, track number 1 on Technique is Fine Time, and track number 1 on Electronic is Idiot Country. Fine Time is just a brilliant album opener for me. It's silly, really, but it also really captures a moment where acid house was becoming popular and into the mainstream. Is it New Order's best single? No, not necessarily, but I'm not rating it as a single, I'm rating it as an album track, and as an opener, it's perfect for Technique, really. And I'm going to give Fine Time 4.5 out of 5. As for Idiot Country, I do like that. It's another great album opener. I think overall I would prefer Fine Time out of the 2 tracks. So to pit those 2 track number 1s against one another, I'm going to give Idiot Country 4 out of 5. So on to round 2 with track 2 for each album. Track 2 on Technique is All the Way. Track 2 on Electronic is Reality. All the Way, I absolutely adore that. Whilst Technique was really groundbreaking and moving New Order into a real sort of dancey situation in a lot of it, All the Way is sort of almost a throwback at this point to maybe at least the Brotherhood era, if not previous. And it just goes to show that Technique is the perfect blend of dance and indie rock, really, as All the Way is just one of New Order's most underrated tracks. It's an easy 5 out of 5 for me, All the Way, it really is. As for Reality, that's another one I really love, and it's a real high point on the Electronic album. Still one of my very favourite tracks, not just on this album, but by Electronic in their entire catalogue. So I'm going to give Reality 5 out of 5 as well. As far as I'm concerned, this round is a draw, to be honest, because they are both 2 absolutely astonishing tracks. Round 3 and track 3 on Technique is Love Less, and on electronic, Tighten Up. Love Less, that's kind of grown on me more over the years, really. I always found it one of the weaker tracks on Technique, even though you could argue there aren't any truly weak songs on the album. It is that good an album, as is electronic, really. But it has grown on me a little bit over the years. While it'll never be my favourite New Order song, and not my favourite on this album, I'm going to give Love Less 4 out of 5. Tighten Up, it's got a real sort of memorable intro that as soon as I see the phrase tighten up, I can hear that intro in my head. I think it's had slightly diminishing returns for me, Tighten Up, over the years. While I still think it's great, as I think all this album is great, I really can't choose between Loveless and this as to who to give the edge to, so I'm going to give Tighten Up 4 out of 5 as well. So another draw in round number 3. I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't be having too many draws in rounds, because then the end result would probably be very close, if not equal, perhaps, but I'm sure it won't be. Round 4 sees Round and Round, the second single from Technique, pitted against The Patience of a Saint, the Pet Shop Boys collaboration from Bernard Sumner and Johnny Marr. Round and Round, I think Tony Wilson wanted that to be the lead single from Technique. That was his suggestion, and New Order, being as contrary as they were, just said no, we're going to go with Fine Time. Round and Round is wonderful, I love it. 4.5 out of 5. I'm not going to bang on too much about these because we could be here all day. Patience of a Saint, that is an outstanding contribution from the Pet Shop Boys, as you would expect. I mean, to bring Neil Tennant, Chris Lowe, Bernard Sumner and Johnny Marr together, is that not the greatest supergroup ever, or what? Kind of makes you wish that there was more PSB involvement. I mean, obviously there was Getting Away With It, which, by the way, you won't see included in this, not just because it would mean that it was still an unfair fight with Electronic having an extra track, but original copies of this album, at least UK versions, didn't include Getting Away With It. Subsequent reissues, I think most of those have, including this one that I hold in my hand here, but Getting Away With It won't be included. The Patience of a Saint, nice duet on vocals between Barney and Neil. I'm giving it 5 out of 5. It is pure class, it really is. Round 5, Guilty Partner against Gangster. Guilty Partner, it is the weakest track on Technique for me. There again, I don't hate it, I do like it, I just don't absolutely love it like I love almost everything else on this album. So Guilty Partner, I think it's going to get my lowest score so far. I think that's a 3.5 out of 5 for me, which is respectable in my opinion. As for Gangster, interesting backstory with Gangster, because that was something that Bernard Sumner had started writing and attempting to record, I think in the mid-80s, as originally he was planning a solo album, and I think he had collaborated a little bit with Johnny Marr in this early period, but he wanted to write a song about the state of the streets of Manchester and the police who operated and everything. And eventually, a few years later, it would wind up on this album, but it was a song that had a long gestation period, and it's really been worked on exceptionally well, to be honest, as Gangster. Fantastic stuff. I want to give this 4.5 out of 5. It is another standout on the album. So Soviet would come next on Electronic, so I'm going to move on from that, as that's like the 10th track, or the one that, because it's more of an interlude, almost like a commercial break in the album, you could say, I can't really pit it against anything on Technique. So moving on from Soviet, and we get to round number 6. We get Run from Technique, the third and final single released from the album, against Get the Message, which was technically the first single released from Electronic, unless you count Getting Away With It, being that was on subsequent reissues of the album. Run I've always liked. Apparently that was one that, although they have performed it live, maybe not so much in recent years, but back in the day I remember it was at least Peter Hook, it might have even been Barney agreeing with him, astonishingly enough, saying that Run was always a difficult one to really project in a live concert setting for some reason. I can't really see why, but nonetheless, I always really loved Run. I think probably my favourite of the singles, certainly in the more kind of guitar-based rather than synthesizer-based New Order canon. It's up there for me. It's a 5 out of 5 for me, Run. Get the Message is a good song. It's no getting away with it, but then I'm not comparing it with that. I'm trying to pit it against something from New Order. A little bit sort of lackadaisical maybe. It has an air of maybe almost falling half asleep at the wheel a little bit, Get the Message. It's pleasant, it's decent, it's got some great synthesizer, some great acoustic guitar from Johnny Marr on it. I think it's Johnny Marr, could be Bernard who's playing acoustic on that. Electronic have done better for me. I kind of see why it came out as a single, but I'm going to give it 4 out of 5, Get the Message. Round number 7 is Mr. Disco versus Try All You Want. Oh, what a round. 2 absolute bangers. Mr. Disco, it's weird, I mean, I've listened to this album certainly since I became a really big New Order fan in the mid-1990s, and I've heard this album multiple times. I've heard them both multiple times. Mr. Disco was one that for some reason it took me many years to really grow into it, and now I think it's one of the album's highlights. It's up there, top 2 or 3 on the entire album. A sort of love letter to a holiday romance, really. It's quite bittersweet when you listen to it, but it is marvellous, and it's a real sort of nice mesh of indie and dance and real kind of Balearic Spanish holiday dance music as well. Mr. Disco's an easy 5 out of 5. However, Try All You Want has long been one of my favourite electronic tracks. Is it the best on the album? It might be for me, you know. Try All You Want is marvellous. I've got an electronic bootleg which was recorded live when they were supporting Depeche Mode in America in 1990, and they were trialling out a lot of the album, but a lot of the tracks were instrumentals because Bernard hadn't been bothered writing the lyrics yet, and the instrumental of Try All You Want that they played in the Dodgers Stadium, I think it was marvellous, and the vocal version just improves on it. So Try All You Want has to be a 5 out of 5 for me as well. So another draw there. The penultimate round here in the Factory Fight is round 8, and we've got Vanishing Point versus Some Distant Memory. Vanishing Point sounds like something that should have been a single. It was the theme, or a version of it was a theme for a British TV series as well, so perhaps that kind of familiarity meant that they didn't want to release it as a single. But it did appear on the Best of New Order quite incongruously in 1994. It's a great track though, regardless, and it's a 4.5 out of 5 for me, Vanishing Point. As for Some Distant Memory, I do really like that as well. I think I've got to give Vanishing Point the slight edge here. Out of the 2 tracks, I would prefer to listen to Vanishing Point more. So I feel a little bit stingy, as I know I do really love the track, but I am going to give Some Distant Memory just 4 out of 5 here. And the final round, round 9. Last track on Technique is Dream Attack. Final track on Electronic is Feel Every Beat. Dream Attack, it's like the spiritual successor to All the Way and Run, really, for me. It's the other really strong guitar-based track and an absolutely perfect album closer here on Technique for New Order. I've always loved Dream Attack. Just that sort of jangly guitar section that comes in the middle of the song gives me goose pimples every time. 5 out of 5, such an easy 5 out of 5, and there again, similar to Mr. Disco and All the Way, really. I mean, they're kind of like my 3 favourites on the album there. No question that Dream Attack is a perfect 5. Feel Every Beat, the second and final single from the debut album here. It's quite amusing, really, that you hear Bernard Sumner rapping and he has to sort of sniff to start the track. It makes it a little bit unusual and a bit comedic, I suppose. I always liked Feel Every Beat. I don't think Bernard Sumner would ever be considered a kind of hip-hop icon, really, on the strength of it. I think it was a good choice for a single, and it's a good album closer as well, very good. And I've always really enjoyed it. There's plenty of good remixes of it out there as well, for those who want to check those out. So yeah, Feel Every Beat, I'm going to give 4 out of 5 to. And there you can see who has won, and Technique is the winner here. I think it was a close showing. Some rounds were draws a lot, really, more than what I'd kind of intended. But with Technique, I've always said that's been my favourite album of all time. And Electronic is right up there. It's going to be top 5, I think, certainly, at the very least, in my all-time favourite albums. And their follow-up, Raise the Pressure, out on Parlophone a few years later. That's one that I think's almost as good, and sometimes I even prefer it, depending on what mood I'm in. But regardless, in this battle of factory albums here, both kind of a fairly similar, albeit 2.5 year gap, but certainly that sort of indie dance mode that Bernard Sumner particularly was leaning into more. I had a feeling Technique would win, and it's a deserved winner, but that's not to say that Electronic didn't have a strong showing here, as you can see from the scores on the screen. So there we go, that was a factory fight between Technique in 1989 and Electronic in 1991. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts on the format. This is probably a one-off thing. I mean, if I think of 2 other albums, they're not necessarily going to be from Factory Records roster, although I kind of like the video title Factory Fight. That could be a good series name. If you'd like to see 2 particular albums pitted against one another, and I do have them, or I can access them and listen to them easily enough, then if you want me to do something along similar lines, then perhaps we'll look at this kind of format again in the future. I don't know how well this has worked, really. I feel it's kind of a little bit haphazard, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed determining which tracks are the most superior against one another and which album I love the most here today. I want to say special thanks to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now, and please join me again next time for my next vinyl community and music related video. Cheers everyone. See ya!